It's fascinating to see how games have developed into such an art form. This has always been the case, but it feels like we haven't really viewed it with that perspective until relatively recently. Long ago, games were just those fun things that came out from big company whenever they happened to be released. But as time moved forward, many of us realized, oh, these are projects that myself or anyone else I know can make. Indie games like Undertale helped push the idea that just because a game is made by one individual doesn't mean that it can't have a lasting impact on its players. In 2018, Toby Fox released a title that would be the follow-up to the cult hit Undertale. Not really a sequel, per se, rather a game that would serve as a companion to the previous. Hello everyone, it is so good to see you. After years of waiting, we have finally got our hands on the next part of Toby Fox's episodic title, Deltarune. 2 parts, in fact. Chapters 3 and 4 came at just the right time to fill that 3 and 4 shaped hole in my heart. But how does it hold up to the first 2 chapters? Now that it has a price compared to 1 and 2 being free, is it worth the cost of $25 US? And perhaps most importantly, for those holding out, is it worth getting into this incomplete story now? Or is there still enough here to satisfy a first-time player? This is mostly going to cover the latest 2 chapters, but it's still worth touching on chapters 1 and 2 of Deltarune. As mentioned, it is certainly a lot easier to settle yourself into this game if you played Undertale. Many characters are curiously the same, though there's still no explanation as to why. You play as Chris, a silent protagonist and the only human in a little town filled with monsters, some familiar and many of them new. It's a very peaceful and cozy setting that helps you get affiliated with the characters. You do, however, only spend a small portion of your time here. In various places of this town, there are entrances to a dark world, which is where the core of Deltarune takes place. Here, you team up with fellow inhabitant of the light world and school bully Susie, along with the prince of the dark world named Rouse. He's very fluffy. Your goal is to seal off a series of dark fountains that have emerged in this world, each that creates a fantastical counterpart of itself based on somewhere in the real world, like a closet. This is all as foretold by a prophecy. Had to get one of those in there too. You will also confront a colorful and charismatic cast of characters in combat. To those who have played Undertale, this is essentially an evolution of that style of battle. When on defense, you play as a little heart on a board as you avoid attacks. This can be as simple as a couple of things jumping out at you to surviving a bullet hell scenario. The variety of attacks will change and be iterated upon over the course of each chapter, but it usually keeps to this format. You can either attack and slay your enemies, or act with a wide array of options and situations that will allow you to show mercy. You can play an entire route as a pacifist, which this game will sort of lean you towards anyway. Because if you don't, you'll miss out on a lot of dialogue. And I do mean some pretty funny dialogue at that. The script is as silly, weird, and humorous as you might remember. There is a lot of puns, play on words, gags, and dad jokes throughout the course of these games. This is present during battles, between character conversations, interactions with random mundane things, on the menus themselves even. The game is very self-aware and is not afraid to break the fourth wall. Whatever debris of the fourth wall was left after these games had to be swept up and personally shipped back to home. That thing was gone and there was no subtlety about it. But that's just part of the personality and identity of Deltarune. Sometimes it really does feel like I'm playing a pixelated show from the 90s. Yet despite how goofy and ridiculous some of the scenarios can be, the game can have a very heartfelt and serious tone when it needs to. Whether you're trekking in the dark world or exploring home in the light world, the plethora of characters you meet and talk to are all so distinct, so memorable. Some of them feel like people I knew back in school, and others are shockingly relatable. Susie, who has a very sharp contrast to the rest of the cast when you first meet her, has slowly turned into the fan favorite. The community just loves seeing her on screen now. And Rouse is just the best boy. I will take a lot of unusually shaped bullets for this creature. He is just so fluffy. Along with its friendly and outgoing cast, you also meet ruthless characters that pose their own challenges to the player. Sometimes you're fighting a deranged king that would kill his own son and wants to see the fountain swallow everything in pure, deep darkness. Other times you're fighting a water cooler. Not just any water cooler either. A water cooler that plays hard to get.
It wants me so bad.
And underneath all the wholesome dialogue, humor, and gags is a title with some of the most thoroughly explored lore of any game I have ever seen. Simply playing through a single chapter once is not enough. There are very specific actions to make, items to find, and bosses to fight that will unveil layers to this story and go deeper than you can ever imagine. If you're even a bit of a lore hunter, these chapters alone will keep you digging down one of gaming's deepest rabbit holes. Even more so if you've kept up with the crazy amount of theorizing videos for Undertale and how it reflects itself in Deltarune. Oh, but that's a whole other topic. We've got chapters 3 and 4 to talk about. You know what that means? Chapter 3 assumes you already get the gist of the game and throws you right into the adventure with minimal tutorial, so I hope you remember how to play. And if you don't, I suggest you stop forgetting and remember to remember. The beginning looks as though it's going to start off a bit serious. We see Susie and Rousey chatting more openly with each other, and there's moments of trust built between them, as well as some foreshadowing to the next chapter. We get to planning some wholesome festival activities, witnessing how far their characters have come in the last few chapters, as well as some heavier talk. Until... we go from talking about the infinite darkness to whatever the hell this is. Mr. Tenna is a wild character who lives for entertaining the audience and his sick, highly giftable dance moves. There is really no other way to describe this. The entire intro time traveled from the era of YouTube poop. This is one of those moments where I can't tell if production value has gone up or down. What do you mean I can't put the letter G twice? Oh, we're on a budget. We can only afford some letters once. I guess I'm GBD now. If you think this looks like Zelda, yeah. Toby Fox realized they're not going to make a Four Swords Adventures again and decided to do it himself. Look, it's even got a magic croissant. You know, it's rather hard to determine what to show and not show in this review. Deltarune is a game where, for the most part, I highly recommend you jump right into it and witness it for yourself. There isn't a whole lot to spoil about Chapter 3, really. This is more of an interlude chapter than anything. The filler episode, if you will. Don't tell Tenna I call this program filler. You're mostly playing minigames and screwing around on a set, as well as sometimes playing Matchmaker? Given the context, they're fun minigames to play too, and serves as a distraction from the main quest. But it might feel somewhat jarring if you're jumping right into Chapter 3 after over 3 years of waiting. Myself and the characters in-game were just wanting to get this show back on the road again, so to speak. Luckily, it doesn't overstay its welcome and we do get back on track soon enough. As the previous chapters did, the game tries to set the general rule of showing mercy and to recruit as many enemies to your side as you can. There's a reason to do that for Chapter 3 in particular, which we'll touch on later. Despite how much this chapter veers away from the main story, it's still very well written, frantic, and energetic. I always say, for this series, it's the tiny scenarios that make up a powerful whole. The game also fully understands what it's capable of and will often turn that on its head. Tenna himself is an absolutely bombastic and unhinged host that guides you through this short chapter. It's about 3 or 4 hours long on the first run, and you might think to yourself, that's it? One of the true purposes of this chapter is what happens at the end, setting up for the real star of the show with this update, Chapter 4. It wasn't until I started to dive into Chapter 4 that I realized why both of these chapters came out together. This is the longest chapter thus far and delves into much more story and lore than the previous ones. Again, I feel it's appropriate that I not share as much footage on this, especially the latter half. This will answer some lingering questions and introduce some new characters in both the light and dark worlds. It will, of course, also bring about new questions, but that's just more fuel for the theorists out there. In the very beginning of Chapter 1, our meeting with Rousey starts with him telling us of a prophecy. We didn't really get much more about this prophecy explained to us until now, and it does, as you might expect, play a big role in this game's plots. But before we even go into the next dark world, we spend a surprising amount of time in the light world, more so than in any other chapter thus far as well. It is used as a means to bring some characters closer together, as well as witnessing some strange things happening. Just some weird stuff going on. And a lot of the most interesting bits of the plot are told when it's non-verbal. Ain't that some irony? I've always been a fan of storytelling through unconventional means. One of my favorite ways of achieving this is when a plot point is done not with words, but with something that can be perceived just by looking at and analyzing the game. In the case of games like Undertale and Deltarune, a lot of times that's in the UI. You can learn a lot about characters through your actions and by observing how others react within their own choices in-game. Early on in Chapter 3, for example, La Niña and El Niña are in perfect synchronization, but as they start to argue, the battle patterns get more disjointed and easier to predict. Silently telling a story through the UI or menu is one of my favorite aspects to see played within games, and this title has no shortage of it. This chapter is just so good, from the slice of life moments between other characters, to the mystical feel and setting of this part's dark world. It's just... how do they just keep getting better, man? Why can't I write stories like this? I'm gonna be writing this video with Mamma Mia! It's not a stretch to say that one of the most impactful aspects of this game is the soundtrack. From the very sweet and innocent whimsy of Castletown to the energy of Rude Buster while in battle, it's so special when the creator of a game also composes a vast majority of its music. It gives the authentic feel that this is exactly what the story writer wanted their game to sound like. If you're a fan of leitmotifs, these games have made an art form around it. Each moment-to-moment scene with its accompanying music, whether it's lighthearted or ominously dire, fits so well. From all of the carefree moments to each of the secret boss battle themes, there are so many songs to get stuck in your head. By the way, this game has Switch 2 exclusive content. So there's exactly one boss fight that makes use of the Joy-Con mouse mode if you're playing on Switch 2, allowing you to go hands-on using mice with the mice. I will say it is missable, so if you want to enjoy mouse mode on Switch 2, make sure you recruit everyone possible in Chapter 3 so you can play this in Chapter 4. You make use of 2 Joy-Con, one in each hand, as you pet cats and match positions. Deliver cats to their basket, pet cats in self-defense, and protect yourself from their cat beams. You can also pet Rousey too much and overstimulate him, but he's just so fluffy, I can't help it! It's kinda crazy, man. I think Toby Fox made a better implementation of dual mice mode before Nintendo themselves could. I mean, sure, there's the welcome tour, but this is an actual game, and it felt good. You can even set the mice sensitivity beforehand. I hope this becomes a standard in every title that supports this feature in-game. This battle does exist across all platforms, but they're controlled with the stick instead. Not quite as flexible as a pair of mice could be. Deltarune is a game that leaves our consciousness for long periods of time. We think back on it sometimes and speculate how the characters are doing, where the story is going. It's like a season of an anime or show that you're a fan of. But when it's back and it gets this deep into the plot, I am so attentive in absorbing every little word. In those moments, it's as though it never left. It's like an old friend now. Chapter 4 is a thoughtful dive into characters that we've been following for years. It's an emotional exploration into what will likely build up to be a powerful climax to the story. There's also the haunting continuation of any weird routes you decided to take, if you happen to proceed with that. Chapter 3, on the other hand, is a short post, but like in video game format. And you know what? This brand of humor is something that video games need. The inspiration it takes from games by Shigesato Itoi are very present here. I believe in one of the ads for Mother 3, it was specifically described as strange, funny, and heartrending. At this point, every time I reach credits, the list of names gets longer and longer. More people are coming together to make this title into one that this generation will remember for decades. If their goal was to make a game that carries on the spirit of certain titles that came before it, then by the end of Chapter 4, I think you'll agree that they're doing just that. You can still try Deltarune Chapter 1 and 2 for free, with the upgrade to 3 and 4 set to $25 US. This price point will also get you Chapters 5, 6, and 7 when they're completed, with Chapter 5 already planned for 2026. I personally feel that this is worth the price point for what it has to offer, and also the kind of quality it promises for future installments. Each chapter does end with a cliffhanger, but I feel that the zany and heartfelt adventures we've had thus far is well worth getting into at this point. It's going to get more intense from here, and I cannot wait to see what happens next. With that in mind, I give Deltarune Chapters 1 through 4 a 9 out of 10. Masterfully crafted, this is a series that has earned its positive reputation among its fans, even if some are a little more sour on it than others. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it is still an incomplete game. From not taking itself 100% seriously all the time, to some of the most gripping scenes or moments of silence that make you think about life, this has a little bit of something for everyone. We eagerly await Chapter 5 and the twists it may hold as the plot gets darker, yet darker. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, you can subscribe to GVG for some more. If you've already subscribed to us, well, aren't you just a peach? If you still haven't subscribed, that's okay, but you're taking too long. I'm just kidding. All right, till we meet again,